Some love stories do not end with a goodbye. They don't close with a final scene or fade out with the credits. Instead, they linger quietly, living in glances that were never explained, in memories fans replay years later, and in the strange ache of something that felt real but was never given a name. In the world of K-dramas, where chemistry is crafted and emotions are rehearsed, there are rare pairings that escape the boundaries of fiction. Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won became one of those rare pairings. Years have passed since Fight for My Way ended, yet their connection still feels unfinished, as though a chapter was paused rather than closed. When Fight for My Way first aired, it did not arrive with the loud confidence of a blockbuster. It felt modest, grounded, almost shy. Two underdogs chasing dreams, two friends walking the fragile line between friendship and love. But something happened the moment Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won shared the screen. Their chemistry wasn't loud or dramatic. It was lived in. It felt like history. Like two people who had already loved each other long before the cameras started rolling. That familiarity became the heartbeat of the drama, and it was impossible to ignore. What made their connection so powerful wasn't just the romance written into the script, but the way it unfolded naturally, almost carelessly, as if no one was watching. Their conversations felt unfinished in the best way, their silences heavier than dialogue. When Park Seo-joon's character looked at Kim Ji-won, it didn't feel like admiration crafted for television. It felt like recognition. And when Kim Ji-won returned that gaze, there was softness there, a quiet understanding that suggested years of shared emotions, even beyond the storyline. Fans noticed it early on, not because of dramatic kisses or grand confessions, but because of the small things. The way they leaned toward each other unconsciously. The way laughter came easily between takes. The way their eyes softened when the other spoke. These were not moments that demanded attention, yet they captured it effortlessly. It was the kind of chemistry that doesn't beg to be seen. It simply exists. As the drama progressed, audiences became deeply invested, not just in the characters, but in the connection between the actors themselves. Interviews only fueled the fascination. Park Seo-joon often spoke of Kim Ji-won with a comfort that felt intimate, never exaggerated, never performative. Kim Ji-won, reserved and thoughtful, spoke of him with warmth that lingered just a second longer than expected. Neither crossed any lines. Neither confirmed or denied anything. And perhaps that was the most compelling part. There was no need to explain something that felt quietly understood. Behind-the-scenes footage added another layer to the story fans were beginning to tell themselves. Between takes, they moved easily around each other, as if proximity was natural. There was laughter, teasing, and moments of shared silence that didn't feel awkward. In a world where actors are often careful, guarded, and hyper-aware of public perception, their ease stood out. It felt unfiltered. And when the drama ended, that ease did not transform into something else. It simply disappeared from public view. That disappearance is where the feeling of unfinished truly began. Unlike many popular K-drama pairings, Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won did not continue to reference each other often after the drama. There were no constant reunions, no forced nostalgia, no obvious attempts to capitalize on their popularity as a couple. They went on with their careers, choosing different projects, different paths. And yet, fans couldn't help but feel that something had been left unresolved. Not because they expected a public romance, but because the emotional resonance of their connection had never been addressed or closed. There is something haunting about relationships that exist quietly, especially in the entertainment industry, where everything is amplified, labeled, and consumed. When something meaningful passes without explanation, it invites imagination. Fans began to wonder whether the restraint was intentional, whether what they saw on screen reflected something personal that needed to be protected, whether timing, careers, or fear of scrutiny kept something unspoken. What makes Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won's story endure is not scandal or rumor, but restraint. There were no leaked photos, no dramatic headlines, no public denials. Just two people who shared something rare on screen and then returned to their private lives. That silence allowed fans to project emotion, longing, and unanswered questions onto their story. And in that silence, the idea of what could have been grew stronger. Years later, fans still revisit Fight for My Way, not just for the nostalgia of the drama, but for the emotional authenticity it captured. Rewatching it feels different now. Knowing how rarely such chemistry appears, viewers notice new details. A glance held too long. A smile that wasn't scripted. A moment where acting seemed to dissolve into something real. These details feel heavier with time, as though they were hints left behind, waiting to be understood later. Park Seo-joon's career soared, carrying him into global recognition. Kim Ji-won continued to build a reputation for depth and emotional intelligence in her roles. They grew separately, yet the memory of their shared work remained oddly untouched by time. Fans often say that some couples move on in real life but stay alive in fiction. With Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won, it feels like the opposite. Their fictional story ended, but the feeling of them together never quite did. There is also something deeply human about unfinished connections. Not every meaningful bond becomes a lifelong relationship. Some exist briefly, intensely, and then fade, leaving behind a sense of wonder rather than closure. Perhaps that is why this pairing resonates so strongly. It mirrors real life more than fairy tales do. The idea that two people can meet at the wrong time, share something beautiful, and then walk away without fully understanding what it meant. Fans don't cling to this story because they demand a reunion or a confirmation. They cling to it because it reminds them of love that doesn't need to be defined to be real. Love that exists in moments rather than milestones. Love that is felt, not announced. In that way, Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won represent a different kind of romance, one that defies the usual narratives of celebrity relationships. Even now, whenever either actor is paired with someone new on screen, comparisons inevitably arise. Not out of disrespect, but out of memory. The standard set by their chemistry remains difficult to replicate. That says something profound about what they created together. It wasn't just a successful pairing. It was an emotional imprint. The phrase unfinished does not always mean something is broken. Sometimes it means something was too real to be contained within a beginning and an end. Sometimes it means the story served its purpose and left quietly, without demanding more. Perhaps Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won's connection exists exactly as it should, untouched by explanation, preserved in the space between fiction and reality. And maybe that is why, years later, fans still talk about them in hushed tones, with nostalgia rather than obsession. Not as a scandal, not as a rumor, but as a feeling, a memory, a chapter that remains open not because it needs continuation, but because it never truly ended. In the ever-changing world of K-dramas, where new couples emerge every season and chemistry is constantly redefined, there are very few pairings that withstand time without constant reminders. Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won are one of those rare exceptions. Their story does not rely on updates or headlines. It lives quietly, sustained by emotion rather than evidence. And perhaps that is the most beautiful part of all. Some love stories are meant to be loud, celebrated, and confirmed. Others are meant to remain soft, incomplete, and unforgettable. This one belongs to the latter. And as long as fans continue to feel that gentle ache when they think of Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won together, the story will remain exactly where it is, unfinished, and forever alive. The reason this story continues to breathe, even after so many years, is because it never asked to be proven. It survives without confirmation, without denial, without the sharp edges of reality that usually dull romantic myths. Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won exist in a rare emotional space where fans are not chasing truth, but holding on to feeling. And feeling, unlike fact, does not expire. Every time an old clip resurfaces online, it spreads like a quiet spark, a behind-the-scenes laugh, a moment of eye contact during an interview, a scene replayed with fresh eyes. New fans discover what older viewers already know, that something about them refuses to fade. It is an obsession that drives these rediscoveries, but curiosity mixed with longing. People want to understand why this particular pairing feels different, why it still stirs emotions when so many others have been archived and forgotten. There is also the power of timing. Fight for My Way arrived at a moment when both actors were standing at emotional crossroads in their careers. Park Seo-joon was transitioning from rising star to leading man, still grounded enough to feel accessible. Kim Ji-won was shedding the shadows of second lead roles, stepping into a space that demanded vulnerability and strength at once. Their meeting on that set felt like two paths crossing at exactly the right emotional moment. Sometimes, those intersections matter more than duration. Fans often speak about what-if scenarios, not because they expect answers, but because imagining alternatives feels comforting. What if they had met later? What if they had worked together again? What if the world had been quieter, less demanding, less watchful? These questions are never meant to accuse or speculate recklessly. They are reflections of how deeply the story resonated, how naturally people wanted to see that connection continue. What makes their unfinished feeling even more compelling is the maturity with which both actors handled it. There was no attempt to romanticize the past for attention. No cryptic posts, no nostalgic marketing, no playful hints. They allowed the work to stand on its own. In an industry that often thrives on fan service, that restraint felt almost radical. It showed respect for each other, for the audience, and for whatever that connection truly was. As time passes, the idea of reunion becomes less about romance and more about artistic curiosity. Fans imagine them sharing a screen again not to confirm rumors, but to revisit that rare emotional frequency they once shared. The thought alone sparks excitement, not because it promises answers, but because it promises feeling. And feeling, as this story has proven, is enough. There is a quiet sadness woven into this narrative, but it is not bitter. It is the kind of sadness that exists in memory, gentle and reflective. The understanding that not all meaningful connections are meant to evolve. Some exist to shape us, to leave a mark, and then to let us go. Perhaps that is why this pairing feels so real. It mirrors the loves people carry in their own lives, the ones that didn't turn into forever, but still mattered deeply. In many ways, Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won symbolize a different kind of romance, one that doesn't need possession or permanence to be valid. A romance built on shared moments, mutual respect, and emotional honesty. That kind of story does not demand closure. It asks to be remembered. As K-drama continues to evolve, with bigger budgets, global audiences, and carefully curated images, stories like this become even more precious. They remind viewers of a time when chemistry felt accidental, when emotions weren't always polished, and when love stories didn't need to be loud to be powerful. The unfinished feeling remains because it belongs to the audience now. It lives in rewatches, in comment sections, in late-night thoughts about characters who felt like real people. It lives in the soft realization that some stories are not meant to conclude, they are meant to echo. And so, the story of Park Seo-joon and Kim Ji-won continues, not on screen, not in headlines, but in the quiet spaces where memory and imagination meet. A love story that never asked to be finished, only felt. If you enjoy deep, emotional K-drama stories like this and want more untold moments, quiet connections, and behind-the-scenes narratives that stay with you long after the screen fades to black, stay connected with Midnight in Seoul. This is where stories don't end, they linger.